And it was been a busy week in the world of professional wrestling, so we'll go all the way back essentially to the beginning, which would be essentially Saturday, and WWE Night of Champions, the pay-per-view event from Saudi Arabia. I think an overall pretty good show, and like we've talked about before, it's nice that they're kind of tied in as regular pay-per-views and not looked at as just like weird outliers. It furthered the story with the bloodline and everything like that. So what would you give your grade? We put the poll out there, Brandon, and a lot of people gave it about an A. And some even gave it an A+, but nobody had anything bad to say about Night of Champions.
No, I mean, for me, I'm a little more critical because, I would say a B+. I mean, I guess if you want to be, I guess that's me being a little bit critical. To me, that's a solid show. I mean, they had a lot of great stories in there. Obviously, the whole bloodline situation. There's another page there with the whole situation with the Usos and Reigns. It's interesting. I think that was a good way to cap off the night. I mean, the Brock Lesnar Cody Rhodes finish, I think they did it well considering how Monday Night Raw kind of happened the couple of nights later. I mean, Cody, and that's the thing. Cody did not tap. It was a technical submission, so it was how it is, the standard. All right, he passed out, his body gave out kind of thing. So he didn't tap, so that's one thing you could look at, like, all right, so they're going to build a three, a best of three. So that overall that was a good match. I mean, it was a good almost 10 minutes as I'm seeing here on the times. It felt good. I mean, it felt like a decent length for a Brock Lesnar match. I mean, the reason why I have to give it a B+ and not a straight up A is Rhea Ripley just demolished Natalya, and I just out of spite, like, a 1 minute match to me on a pay-per-view, I just cannot get. I can't give if you're gonna have a match like that on the pay-per-view, that to me, you automatically go to a B in the B grades. So that's why it's. Besides,
you don't like any squash matches on a pay-per-view?
No, I don't. I don't. Especially a title match. I don't think that's. And I get, yes, Rhea Ripley is pretty damn good. Obviously, we know that she's one of the biggest names in the business, male or female, it does not matter. But you with a veteran like Natalya, who's a hell of a competitor. I thought they just did that dirty. A minute match, that just, to me, I didn't like it. It's, to me, if you're going to do a squash, why are you doing it on a pay-per-view? And why wouldn't you do it with a caliber of maybe, a squash type talent, which is not Natalya. Natalya is not a squash type of a competitor. She's a proven commodity. She's been in the business a long time. We obviously know the history.
Who could she have squashed?
I mean, she could have squashed Zelina Vega, but not on the pay-per-view. Like, it could have been on a Raw or a SmackDown.
You're saying if this was the plan for Rhea Ripley, the match should have just been kept off of the show?
Yes. If you're gonna have a minute match, a squash match like that, why waste a pay-per-view time? That's just how I look at it. I would have liked to seen. If here's the thing. I wouldn't have minded if it was even a 5, 6, 7 minute match. Like, that's fine. At least a few minutes. Like, literally, you blinked, the match was over. Like, it was like Dominic created a distraction. Rhea took advantage. Natalya never even got out of the gates, and the match was over. And I'm like, all right, well, that was quick. I literally went. It was literally the equivalent of me getting up to go to the kitchen, grab my drink, and sit back down. The match was already over, so to speak. I saw the match, but I'm like, that was it. I rushed back to sit down and watch this because. I was excited because it's a Rhea Ripley match, and Rhea Ripley is, she is must-see TV. But at the same time, I don't like squash matches on pay-per-views. I just don't. I just think there isn't a place for them. Like, pay-per-views are, they're a showcase of the, and this is kind of a loose interpretation of it. But this is where each, you're supposed to get the best of the best on each pay-per-view. That's kind of the thing. It's a special event. That's why they call it a premium live event. Now, I'm still going to call it a pay-per-view because it is to me. But a premium live event means you get the premium matches. This was not a premium match to me. So that's why I was like, okay. That's why out the gates when we were talking grades, B+ is where I was at. That's just, and by that metric, everything else is great. Everything else is great. AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, good as advertised. Trish Stratus, Becky Lynch, good match.
Obviously, what they did in that match was Zoe Stark coming and helping Trish Stratus is going to further that. So we're not done with Trish Stratus and Becky Lynch by a long shot. We're not done with Brock Lesnar and Cody Rhodes.
Well, here's the
we're
thing.
Probably not done with Asuka and Bianca Belair now that they split from their WrestleMania to Asuka winning a Night of Champions and becoming the new Raw Women's Champion.
Which, for the record, Jared, you did call that. So good call on that.
I did call it, I believe, if I can recall. I believe
you
it
did.
was my one.
did.
I think this could be a title change.
He did, folks. If you haven't gone back, check the tape. He definitely did, because I'll be straight with you. When we were talking last week, I was like, okay, which matches are we going to have a new champion besides the obvious Rollins Styles? And I remember you said, Asuka, Bianca. Good call. There was one match that I did like it was a little bit shorter. It was a little bit closer to 10 minutes, a little bit under. I did like the Gunther and Mustafa Ali match. We all knew Gunther was not going to lose the match, but there were some points where you could, suspend belief a little bit, because Mustafa Ali had some
finishers on him.
He had some great finishers, but of course, Gunther is he is the ring general, so he's going to be the Intercontinental Champion for a long time. But overall, it was 6 out of 7 matches I was pleased with.
Yeah, no, overall a pretty good pay-per-view. Obviously kicking things off with Seth Rollins and AJ Styles. That was a pretty good match. Unfortunately, it had the unbelievably predictable finish in the sense of that we knew Seth Rollins was going to win, especially after Cody Rhodes was eliminated from that tournament. It was going to be Seth Rollins winning it, so they didn't do any swerves in that nature. Really actually kind of makes me wonder who is next for Seth Rollins when it comes for that championship, like who he could defend it against next. Because nobody is really coming to mind.
No, it's kind of a light list right now, but what I could see is, and I don't know how WWE is going to do it, but maybe the next opponent is the winner of the Money in the Bank.
Whoever wins Money in the Bank, obviously, I feel whoever wins Money in the Bank, maybe I'm wrong, is probably going to hold on to it for a hot minute.
I hope not. I hope they just cash in or
something. You want to see what we've seen with the women's belts recently in Money in the Bank, and that they cash it in like that night.
I'm okay with it if it's done right, and if it's done well. I don't care if it's the same night. You have to do it the right way.
Well, so let me throw this weird and wild one out there, because a lot of people are obviously high on LA Knight and high on him winning Money in the Bank. He's got a qualifying match this Friday to get in there, which he's going to win. But one person who people are also kind of rumoring to maybe win Money in the Bank, there's a bunch, but one in which has a tie-in with Seth Rollins and doesn't have any ties in with SmackDown or Raw, so he could be on Raw. Logan Paul. What if he was to win Money in the Bank and cash in on Seth Rollins in the same night?
But he tore his knee not that long ago. He to my knowledge, he still has months of recovery, I feel like. Because I read things that he's itching to get back, but he's not medically there yet because he tore ligaments in his knee, I thought.
I don't know much about that. And
that usually keeps you out at least 6 months, depending on the level of severity of the injury, because he tore his knee pretty good. I'll never doubt that dude, because everything he's done, everything he says he can do, he's done. So as much as however your personal feelings about the guy is talented. He put his money where his mouth is. So
keeping things more tight to now and new champions. I saw them this past Monday night when I attended Raw. The new women's tag team champions, Ronda Rousey, Shayna Baszler. Listen, I know a lot of people hate Ronda Rousey right now. She gets a lot of boos. People have she doesn't know how to wrestle. We see her too much, this, that, and the other thing. She's not what she was. I get that. But in that women's tag team match, unfortunately, there were no other real teams in that match. Who else are you going to give it to? I think Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler should have won those belts and should have threw them in the garbage and retired the belts. That's what I think should have happened with those belts. I get it that they're trying to. It looked. I don't know if you caught it on Monday Night Raw, but it was like a renaissance. I think WWE is trying to start fresh with these belts. They brought the belts out as if they were the inaugural champions. They put them on a pedestal. Then when they won, they had WrestleMania caliber pyro go off after they won the belts, right? So I think they're trying to start some sort of brand new fold with these belts. But in my eyes,
it's just a refresh. That's all it is.
A refresh to me, a good refresh to me in this would be throw the belts away.
See, here's the thing. I honestly liked them winning. I thought, obviously, like you just said, they were the only tag team in there, and only true tag team, only one unit of all these, these mixed matches. And to me, I was like, okay, when they came into the match, I'm like, okay, if it's anything but Rousey and Baszler, I'm going to be very surprised, because I just figured as much. But what I liked about that was it wasn't even the match itself. The match was okay. It was serviceable. I'm not, it wasn't the greatest match I've ever seen, but it wasn't terrible. It did the job. But when they did the backstage interview, I did like that, because they're essentially trying to elevate this, and I appreciate that. And you know what? Whatever the internet wrestling community has to say about Ronda Rousey, it is what it is. You can complain all you want. she's still a commodity. She will be a commodity. And you know what? She does enough in the ring where she still does damage and she still looks halfway decent in the ring. I don't care what anybody says there. I'm not expecting her to have a crazy amount of moves like certain wrestlers, but she still does a good job. Shayna Baszler is a badass, and you know what? I'm glad they're doing something with Shayna Baszler, for example, because Shayna Baszler's, for a while, I mean, what was she doing? Kind of hanging out. That's what she was doing because they didn't have anything for her. Mm-hmm. So this is a good thing because it gives more women a chance to win a belt, and it keeps someone like Shayna Baszler. And I hate to say this because I have a lot of respect for what she's done in the business and before she came to the business is It keeps her relevant because she was forgotten for a while. Let's be honest. She was kind of forgotten about for a long time because they didn't do anything with her. Now that she's in the picture again with Ronda Rousey, because obviously anyone that knows anything, they know that they're good friends outside the business. So it was a dynamic thing because they're both former MMA, fighters. So to me, it's good. Now, the issue that I have though, and this is why I could see why you'd want to say throw the belts out in the garbage kind of thing, is who the hell is going to face them? And who legitimately can face them right now? Well,
yeah, like who do we have in the tag team world that's a competitor for them? Sonya Deville and Chelsea Green? I mean...
Yeah,
we don't really... And
does anyone take that serious?
For the most part, I mean, we have the NXT women's tag team champs who got called up onto the main roster with the tag team belts in tow. But... yeah, I mean, we don't really have like a lot of other teams. I mean,
no, that's the issue. That's the tough part. Like it puts the belts on legitimate badasses and Baszler and Rousey, but at the same time, it's like, okay, so like who's next? Because unfortunately, we've talked about this for a long time. There isn't that much depth in the division. It's just whether it's singles or tag teams. It's just. The problem is they don't like WWE. I feel like they haven't developed enough in the pipeline, enough of a legitimate tag teams that are strictly tag teams in NXT. Like, yes, you have a few here and there. You got the NXT women's champions and all that. But to me, there's not enough of a pipeline of talent where you're like, okay, you put them in a match with Rousey and Baszler. Okay, it's going to be a good match. It's going to be close. They could win. Right now, legitimately, you're putting together what's these Shotzi and Raquel. Like that, like they just pieced that together because
everybody. I mean, all the teams are pieced together.
Well, because it's like, well, I mean, at least with Liv Morgan and Raquel, at least they formed a unit. Now it's like, okay, Liv's hurt. All right, let's bring Shotzi in. Let's fill the spot. To me, it's like you're just putting things together. I would like to see NXT. Like I'd like to see the developmental side work on developing legitimate tag teams in the women's division. If they can do that, I'd be okay with it. And look at it this way. You know what? There's one way to solve all this women's tag team and lack of depth. Combine the AEW women's roster and the WWE women's roster. We got a lot of talent on both sides. And it's funny because both WWE and AEW have a problem there where they just don't have a lot of legitimacy behind it.
So moving over to AEW, they had a very busy week, both pay-per-view and on television. The pay-per-view in Las Vegas at the T-Mobile Arena, probably the least attended of these Double or Nothing events that they've had. The inaugural AEW pay-per-view is Double or Nothing, and it drew probably more than this. That is one of the big gripes that's going around. They drew about 11,000. I know you watched Double or Nothing, and listen, I really don't have any problem with the number per se. I do have a problem, though, with Excalibur and the other announcers, like beating home the number throughout the show as if it's something to be like proud of. Like, oh, in front of over 11,000, there's over 11,000 people here tonight. And in an arena that holds like 18,000. Like, why are you like screaming and yelling that 11,000 number out every chance you get?
Bro, it was less than 2/3 full. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I saw some of the videos and stuff. And like, because I saw stuff on social media. And then I also saw even Pat McAfee on his show called out AEW. Hey, you might want to be careful how you pan those cameras because it really shows you what kind of lack of attendance you got there. Like, it was funny because, as you know, Pat McAfee is a WWE guy. You know, he's done business with WWE. He's not doing it now. But my point is, Pat McAfee is one of the more, he's in the sports realm and just in the media realm. He's one of the most recognizable names, faces, brands around. And guess what? He called out AEW in a negative light. That's not good press, by the way.
Well, and continuing with the attendance things, obviously, the last time AEW was at the United Center, not counting, I guess, Forbidden Door, but the time that they debuted at the United Center with the big CM Punk announcement on that episode of Rampage, there was like 20,000 people there. AEW Collision is going to be the debut episode in the United Center on June 17th. And who is going to make his return at that event at the United Center? CM Punk. What is the estimation of seats that they're putting for sale for that event? 8,800. That's what they're putting for sale for the United Center. So they're not even attempting to try to do 20,000. And listen, NXT, I understand they did horrible this weekend. I knew they were going to do horrible. Their new MO is about 5,000, between 4,000 and 5,000. That's what they drew in Charlotte. That's what they drew in LA. And that's what they just drew in Lowell, Massachusetts.
So the attendance is about 5,000.
4,000 or 5,000. So essentially a 8,000 seat arena, half full. So imagine a SmackDown from 10 years ago, like a taped Tuesday night SmackDown, where they used just the TV side. That's what they've been drawing for NXT. But the difference is, I guess, in that is NXT, for the most part, has not been AEW hasn't been different. NXT obviously had a huge downturn, and it is what it is. I think WWE is. I mean, you wanted this to be a developmental brand. Good news. You wanted NXT to be the minor leagues of WWE. You're getting that. Major league teams don't want their AAA affiliates more popular than themselves. So WWE, if your success was to make the NXT roster really hungry to go to WWE, because let's face it, the NXT of old, they were drawing 16,000 in Phoenix and getting called up to perform in front of 7,000 for Monday Night Raw.
Well, why do you think
now you're getting the opposite? Now Braun Breaker's I want to be on Raw. Raw draws 11,000 versus 5,000 for an NXT pay-per-view.
That's why guys like Gargano and Ciampa had no interest in going up from NXT, because they were the crowds here are pretty freaking good. So
you're going to pay me essentially the same. I'm going to perform in front of 10,000 or 15,000 people at a sold out Talking Stick Arena or Barclays Center for a NXT pay-per-view. You want me to get called up so I can perform on Raw every week in front of 7,000 in Des Moines, Iowa? No, I would rather stay in NXT. Now it feels more like the minor leagues. You go to this pay-per-view event and it's 4,000 people, and then I go to Raw on Monday night, which is just a weekly TV show, and there's probably over 10,000 people there for Monday Night Raw. So Raw feels like a bigger event, similar to minor league sports. A playoff minor league baseball game draws less than a regular season major.
So speaking of Raw, so how packed was the arena in Albany this week?
It was probably about 10,000. How many
seats are in that game?
About 15.
So it was 2/3 full.
Yeah, so they sold the entire TV side, lower and upper, and then they sold the entire lower. The entire lower was full, all the way as even into the seats behind the Titantron. I was a little behind the Titantron a little bit. So they sold as much as they could behind the stages kind of thing. So if you were to look at the camera on the other side, so the TV side, it was full on the opposite side of TV side, except for the upper deck. So completely full lower bowl, television side upper bowl,
and I mean how was the crowd? Was the crowd pretty good? I mean, from being even though it wasn't a full arena, was it still a pretty live crowd?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, probably about 10,000. And then on SmackDown this upcoming week, they're in an arena that holds 8,800. As of right now, they've sold about 8,800. Now I understand
who did that?
WWE. I mean, that's what SmackDown will be completely full. No curtained off sections this Friday night in Wilkes-Barre. It is a smaller arena. Like I said, it's an 8,900, 8,800 seat arena, and they're selling out literally the entire place.
And where are you sitting in this one?
I don't have my seats yet, so I don't know.
Oh, so you're going to figure this out last minute. Got it. Yeah. Okay.
So we don't know exactly yet.
That's the Jared way to do things. Just wait till the last minute.
I'm leaving it up to somebody else who I wanted to buy some of the last few remaining single seats. There were some single seats that were near each other, and I was like, hey, we buy these single seats. We can just have somebody move down, and we can sit next to each other. No big deal. But my friend says, let's go for broke. I want to wait it out. I want to get tickets on the way. I want to get what it's like playing the stock market, folks, and that's pretty much what he's saying. Yeah. He's like, I want to let the dice roll. I want to see if we can get those floor seats for $30 an hour before the show. That's what he wants. So I'm leaving it up to him. If he drives up the cost, I guess I'm just going to have to say you pay the difference. That's really what it is.
Oh, okay. Well,
hey, if we end up paying $100 for nosebleed seats, I'm still just going to give him $30. That's the whole deal.
Yeah, so
he's rolling the dice. I'm not rolling the dice. He's rolling the dice.
You're keeping pretty much. You're going home the same way. So it's you're not spending any more than what you're.
But I will be going either way. Down to Wilkes-Barre on Friday night for SmackDown. But again, back to the AEW.
Yes.
My issue is again, like, you kind of wonder where they can go. They got a lot of TV shows. They got a lot of TV time. I think about it like Impact Wrestling and, their pay-per-views of being 12 a year back in like 2006. And yeah, WWE had 12 a year, but WWE moved to 12 a year after they've been on pay-per-view for like 10 or 11 years.
Yeah.
AEW is moving to have 2 shows. Yeah, WWE didn't have a show opposing Raw until 9 years in. Raw was 93 to 99. They didn't add SmackDown until Raw was on the air for 6 years.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a slow build.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting having 2 live shows. Saturday night's going to be an interesting one as well because, I know WWE's doing great with the pay-per-views, but those are pay-per-views. They're not doing a weekly Saturday night show. I think the attendance will be all right because it's Saturday night, but you wonder what the TV audience is going to be. They definitely have enough talent to do it. That's not a complaint, but it's going to be curious. Like I said, United Center, they're only going for 8,800 would be a sellout. At the United Center, an arena that can hold up to 23,000 people.
So what do you think of Double or Nothing this year?
Double or Nothing, I will give AEW credit, and that it didn't feel long. A lot of their pay-per-views this year we talk about, they like to drag them out. I'm glad they moved the Hardys and Hook match up to the pre-show. So we had 10 matches on the main card, and that including a match that was kind of thrown into last minute, and that's Chris Statlander beating Jade Cargill in 48 seconds. There's your squash to end the 61-0 streak.
Hold on. We're gonna pause there for a second. So here's how I look at that.
Yes, Jade Cargill in her scheduled match actually wrestled 8 minutes and 50 seconds.
Yes, I look at that segment where she defeated Taya Valkyrie, and then the Chris Statlander situation. I look at that as one segment. Because it was the Jade Cargill segment. So for me, if you want to add up the numbers, it was about a 10-minute segment. So that to me, I'm not worried about it being about a minute or so where Chris came in and defeated Jade, gave her first loss. That to me it's kind of like it's almost like a cash in without a cash in. So it was like, okay, Jade wins a really tough match that was almost 9 minutes with Taya. It was a great match, honestly. I enjoyed that match. And then you're sitting there. I think it was Smart Mark was running his mouth. Somebody, I won't lie. When I was watching that, when he was talking about her being 61-0, the first thing I thought about, and this is not a lie at all, I knew obviously someone was coming out, but who I thought was coming out, this is the 100% truth, Goldberg. Oh my God!
I mean, because we all talk about how he wants to get back in the ring.
Yeah.
He's the one that invented this whole streak thing. He is the pillar in this Jade Cargill storyline of how this all began. In the sense of he started this back in the 90s. That was his deal. He was the 60-something-0 guy.
I like the way they did this because.
You like Chris Statlander being the one that defeats her after almost 2 years?
I do. I like Chris Statlander. I've been a fan of hers. WWE was sniffing around trying to get her to come to WWE. So she's a talented competitor, very highly respected by all accounts of people.
We talk about Brock and the Undertaker and the streak often, and Brock being the one.
But here's do
you think Chris Statlander? Do you think she deserves to be the one in 61-1?
Well, considering the lack of depth in the women's division, she's one of the best that they have. So yes, and Here's why I like it from Jade Cargill losing her first bout. She had a great match. It was a tough match with Taya. And she was obviously, they sell it pretty well. She was obviously, gassed out because it was a hell of a match she just had. And Chris was fresh. So Chris fresh, Jade just got finished up with a tough match. I don't think it makes Jade look bad at all. Actually, it makes her look pretty damn good because she actually didn't lose. I don't think she lost any credibility because of that loss, because of how she lost the match. So to me, I will give AEW credit. I think they did that well, and I thought, considering the way the women's division is right now, Chris Statlander, she's the one, and I'm glad it was chosen. Plus, it was her returning after her injury and everything. So to me, it worked out well. I thought they did that correctly. I honestly, the show itself, I enjoyed it. Like you said, it was like. I'll be straight with you. I was watching it. I wasn't planning on watching it live, but things happen that way, and I put it on. Right at the beginning, and I'm like, oh, smokes! All right, this is And we got through a couple matches. I'm looking at the card. I'm like, wow, it's only like 9:30. We're getting cooking here. And you know what? And to me, it was a good. I thought it was the length of the matches overall. I thought were good.
I think you could have shaved a few minutes off of some stuff. Like the Battle Royal stuff, because it's a Battle Royal. But like, you know, the Adam Cole and Chris Jericho match, 17 minutes. Could have shaved that down to maybe like 14. Easily the Tag Team Championship match. Let's be real. What was the Tag Team Championship match that was the main event of WrestleMania between the Usos and KO and Sami Zayn? Maybe that was 20 minutes. So this Tag Team Championship match, you know, didn't necessarily need to be 20 minutes. Could have shaved that down to 15. Wardlow and Cage, that could have probably been 15. You could have shaved a lot of things down by it.
I do have to.
And the main event probably. Look, I mean, the MJF championship match, and again, I understand they were building this match up a little bit, but it didn't feel like the real true, like, you got to see this main event. It was everybody here, we including, predicted MJF to come out, win this match, move it along. So I feel like that didn't need a WrestleMania caliber. I think, Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns went like 25 minutes, WrestleMania.
But dude,
so this didn't need to be 27 minutes, especially when it wasn't even the main event.
Regardless of how predictable that finish was with MJF winning the match, I liked the way he won the match. Like, the finish was good. I liked what all four pillars did, where they did the guy that they looked up to, like their you know, their mentor, like their finishing maneuver. Like, I thought that was cool. Like, the different pinning combinations was cool. Like, there was a lot of substance in this match that I really enjoyed. And I think, you know, and MJF always finds a way to pull out he always figures out a new way to deceive and to win. It's, to me, I enjoyed it, you know, even though MJF, you know, it was predicted, we figured he was going to win. It was one of those things where there were moments where I felt like, okay, maybe he's got a shot to lose. That's how I felt, at least. And even though I didn't, in the end, I'm like, okay, he's probably going to win. But there were some moments there where I'm like, all right, we might have somebody else here. And to me, it was a good match. It was almost 30 minutes, but I was entertained all the way through. And that, to me, was the match. Honestly, that was the match. I know I was talking about the Anakin Arena, but that was the match I was really looking forward to, was the pillar match. Like, I went, after recording, I'm like, man, you know what? I kind of really want to see the MJF.
What'd you make of the exploding super kick in the Anarchy in the arena match?
It's just, to me, it's, I don't know. It was kind of the substance to it. I'm like, okay, do we really
I think
need
it's
this?
weird that, like, Tony Khan have seen some of these moves that he's tried fail, and yet he still kind of attempts them. He's like, okay, this was like a huge botch. Let's look at that exploding ring match and stuff like that. They talk about the blood and guts thing where Jericho fell off, and you saw the padding behind the cage for that blood and guts match. So you just wonder, like, why is he trying these kind of outlandish things that have a potential to look silly if they go wrong?
You know what, though? I'll give Tony his due on this one, because he's got the stones to do it. Like, even if it
went right, but if it failed, though, it's going to undermine the whole. That's the issue with these moves. Like, they're going to do something that literally these people are working on a 27-minute match, and essentially the Young Bucks are going to do this super kick, and if it fails, it is going to be the only thing that's remembered about this whole match. The only thing remembered about literally one of the bloodiest, most intense American matches that I have seen, in that death match between Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley, a match that would hold up, is one, like I said, in the United States, one of the most, intense, something that could stand the test of time, especially during the pandemic era, because it didn't need people in the crowd. It was what you would want when you have a match with no people in the crowd, where, like, it didn't need that. And yet all we remember is the nonsense at the end after the match.
But at the same time, if you don't take these chances, how do you know if it's good? Like, if you hit a home run. Yes, and sometimes if you strike out. I get that.
Do you think that was a home run, or were you, like, wowed by that?
No, I call it a single or double. Okay, we're talking baseball. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen, but and that's the thing. I'm not the biggest Tony Khan guy. Like, I don't dislike him. And I'm not like, oh my God, Tony Khan's the greatest mind ever. Like, there's some internet wrestling community people that love Tony Khan way too much. I'm kind of like indifferent about Tony Khan. I'm like, all right, cool. He's got some ideas that are good, and there's some things I'm like, all right, well, I don't know what we're doing here. But I at least give him credit that he has the conviction to take chances that maybe WWE, the big brand will not take. So I'm okay with it. But there is another situation that I wanted to talk about. That was the pre-show. We were talking off air about it. Was the Jeff Hardy situation there, where yes, they called it a botch and all that situation. Where
it's just Jeff Hardy being Jeff Hardy.
Well, here's the thing. When you watch the menu, like you watch when he was going for the twist of fate, you could tell he was grabbing at his knee. So obviously he tweaked something. And I think he thought he was in less pain, or like he thought his knee was more stable than what it was. And it looked like he was going for whisper in the wind. And let's just say it didn't look so good when he fell. So,
I mean, I guess the best part about that is on the pre-show.
Yeah, it wasn't like your main event.
And you kind of wonder if it was like on the, you wonder if it's on the pre-show. Obviously, I didn't want a 6-hour show because look at that pre-show match went 15 minutes.
Yeah.
How about, that's kind of ridiculous for a match on a pre-show to go 15 minutes. So if you were there, you were there for like 4.5 hours in the crowd. But good thing that was on the pre-show, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm just, and obviously we'll see more details.
You kind of wonder though, like kind of what I was just alluding to a second ago, if like Tony Khan, while you like Jeff Hardy and Matt Hardy, I wonder if we'll ever see him on the main card again, or if that is just like we also take into account it's Jeff Hardy, so maybe we should put it on the pre-show.
Yeah, it's a possibility. The other thing is too, it's like, why are we putting Hook on the pre-show? Because like obviously people love Hook. Like every time his music hits, the crowd's popping. Like, what are we doing with Hook? Hook's young. He's
I think what they're doing with Hook. They're cooling him down, unfortunately.
Yeah, Hook for a moment there, like he was like there was some steam behind him, and then like it's like okay, we're gonna put him on the pre-show and put him in a 6-man tag for in the pre-show with if the since the Hardys and Hook won, Matt Hardy took ownership of Paige's count. It was like that weird stipulation, like okay, let's give Hook a run. You know what I mean? Like I like to see a run from him. There's guys that in AEW that I feel like are not getting enough run. Like,
well, that's what Collision's for. We're gonna have another 2-hour live show.
But give me more Ricky Starks though.
And I imagine with Collision we're gonna get some pre-stuff as well. So if you go to Collision, you're gonna get some tapings. So Dynamite's gonna have your Rampage and your Dynamite taping. Probably a dark match or two before the show, before 8:00. Then you're gonna go to Collision. There's probably gonna be a dark match, a few before 8:00 for Collision. I guess my one question is with Collision, and if you were running things, they're doing house shows this weekend. AEW is. Once Collision starts, are we done with the house shows? I know WWE does both SmackDown, Raw, and house shows, but AEW, I'm talking AEW. Are we doing Dynamite, Collision, and still attempting like Friday and Sunday night house shows?
I would say no. I think it's not a good idea. If I was in that position, I would say let's focus on our TV and let's keep it at that. I don't think the live event situation is a good idea for AEW right now. I feel like they need to own in on the television side of stuff, make sure they have good quality content there, focus in on that, and then if they get to a point where they're like, okay, this train's moving, we're the train's going downhill with a lot of momentum, then you know what? Let's maybe look into the live event stuff. They're not going to listen to me, but that's just kind of how I would go with it.
We got an AEW pay-per-view at the end of next month. Obviously, we saw that kind of alluded to at the end, costing the Elite the match. So obviously, somebody from New Japan came out. What was his name? Come on, I can't think of it offhand.
Takeshita?
Yeah, Takeshita. I love how, I'm not AEW super fan here, but I love how they make it like we all know who everybody is. Like, yeah, oh my God, it's obviously Takeshi. Like, I'm not.
Oh my God, he's the greatest thing in New Japan history. They make a huge deal.
So it's gonna be Takeshi and Omega at the Toronto pay-per-view, obviously.
But to be fair, I do like the fact that they're bringing in some of these other guys, like Jeff Cobb, guys like that. I didn't. And here's the thing: they hype him up, and I'm like, okay, so this guy. If they obviously know him, I'm like, all right, I don't know who this guy is, but I'm like, obviously he's probably decent. So I will give the commentators a little bit of credit because they hype these guys up a little bit, and I'm like, all right, let me see what these guys got. And I'll be honest with you, I've seen some of them, and I'm like, okay, they're not bad, but okay, I don't know why we had to go off the walls about it.
Toni Storm is the new AEW Women's Champion as she defeated Jamie Hayter. Do you see Toni Storm versus Mercedes Moné at the AEW New Japan event in Toronto?
Ooh, that would be good. I don't know if I'll see it, but it'd be good. That'd be fine. I
imagine they're going to have to include her on that, right? Because, Jay White is now, in AEW. So really, who is the huge name from New Japan that is going to represent that brand in this crossover?
I guess we're gonna. That'd be the name, I guess, right? I feel like. Now I got to ask you, not to circle back too far, but I know we were talking about Jay White. You know what I didn't realize for a minute? It took me a second because I'm like, I've seen Juice Robinson before, and this is gonna sound so amateurish, but I'm like, oh my God, that's CJ Parker from NXT. I forgot it was CJ Parker. I'm like, oh my God, that's I thought he looked familiar. I'm like, wait a second. I think he was in NXT, and I looked. I'm like, oh, he was in NXT 10 years ago.
I mean, I feel like NXT 10 years ago, I mean, you had Okada in NXT 10 years ago.
I know. I'm just like...
Especially, too, when you have like those cruiserweight tournaments that they had where they had a ton of people in there that obviously they didn't sign full-time, or like that Mae Young Classic. They had a bunch of people in there they didn't sign full-time.
Well, remember when like they brought Kenta in and it was like a huge thing?
Yeah.
And like Kenta didn't do anything in WWE. Like his run was so like meh. He was like, I'm going back to Japan.
They brought him in like Shinsuke Nakamura, essentially.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like injuries kind of derailed things for him. But then then he was like, all right, I kind of want to go back to Japan because I was having more fun there and it's home. So, and that's the thing, Shinsuke. I'm not gonna lie, I'm surprised Shinsuke's stayed in WWE as long as he has, and I'm glad he's still flourishing. He's still putting on some bangers. So like, we just got to keep Shinsuke in WWE as long as possible because he's too talented. His gimmick is great. He just carries a great presence. So
just got to give him another push though. He'll be in the Money in the Bank match. He did win his qualifier this past week on Monday Night Raw, so he'll be in there. Maybe he'll get the push. My guess is LA Knight though, but who knows? We got a lot of time between that and Money in the Bank, as well as a little bit of time before the next AEW pay-per-view. But we'll be back next week. For Brandon, I'm Jared. This has been another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast.